There is a place on Earth where the world's highest waterfall drops more than 3,000 feet down the face of a remote plateau. Here in South America, vast tracts of land remain completely unexplored. Shrouded mountaintops hide the world's oldest rocks. And among the rocks dwell mysterious creatures, more ancient than the dinosaurs. Here, legendary rivers of gold and fields of precious stones have lured explorers and adventurers. Many have disappeared without a trace. This lush and exotic wilderness is one of the least known places on Earth, a landscape lost in time. A lifelong passion to uncover its secrets has brought Adrian Warren here many times. As a pilot, explorer, biologist, and filmmaker, Adrian knows this wonderland as well as anyone on Earth. Join him on a journey of discovery into an Eden called the Lost World. Located in the southeastern corner of Venezuela, the Lost World is a vast group of plateaus, which local people call tepuis. Also on the program, a special behind-the-scenes look at the making of this living Eden.
Major funding for nature is provided by the Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television. Major corporate support is made possible by Canon, dedicated to preserving the never-ending beauty of nature. Canon lets you capture the wild in photographs and leave it as you found it. Canon. Ford. Preserving our national parks is an important issue, so Ford has established a number of projects from research and education to cleaner burning vehicles and bicycles in the parks. Ford, working to share today's treasures with future generations. And by TIAA-CREF. How is it that some people always seem to make ends meet when you're sure that money was the last thing on their minds? TIAA-CREF, managing money for people with other things to think about. This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Mount Roraima, the site of a legendary lost world of dinosaurs. The misty summit is a world apart, cut off from the surrounding landscape by sheer, breathtaking cliffs. This giant block of sandstone is called a tepui, and it stands amid one of the least known regions on Earth. Here among tortured rock shapes, in gullies and crevices, strange animals and plants found nowhere else on Earth cling precariously to life. One man has spent much of his life exploring and studying the mysterious tepuis of Venezuela. He is Adrian Warren, a biologist, pilot, explorer, and accomplished British filmmaker. Reading his journal, written 30 years ago, he recalls his first visit here.
It was 1971, and I parachuted in, the leader of a team of scientists eager to explore this completely unknown territory. I was 21 years old and excited by the chance to go where no human had ever been. We made our way upriver until obstacles and rapids forced us to take to the forest. Then, working on compass bearings, we spent a month cutting a trail, traversing streams, balancing our way across natural bridges, and making scientific collections. Much of what we found was new to science.
Among the several new species of frogs that were discovered, one, a tree frog, was named Hyla warreni, after its discoverer, Adrian Warren.
As we approached the northern base of Roraima, we encountered slime forest. We managed to climb a steep ridge, but finally were prevented from reaching the summit of the plateau by 1,200 feet of overhanging rock, the northern prow of Roraima. I was determined that one day I would reach the top. Following that expedition, I've returned many times to see and learn more of the secrets of the magical tepuis. Now, 30 years later, I've come back to realize my old dream, to make it to the top of Roraima's prow and to retrace the journeys of the early explorers who ventured into this remote part of South America. Ordeal. But his party finally reached the base of the ledge. Imtern's progress up the bottom half of the ledge was difficult and exhausting, over tangled roots and branches covered in moss and slime, and steep slopes of slippery mud. The scale of the cliffs was awe-inspiring, but what had seemed from below to be treacherous ironically presented no serious challenge. Imtern's party reached the top and entered a surreal world. The explorer wrote in his journal, "All around us were rocks, seeming to defy every law of gravity, countless caricatures of faces and animals, and unexpected objects." The landscape on the summit of Roraima has not changed since Imtern's ascent nearly 120 years ago, and has probably changed very little in the last million years. In every direction, it's the same wildly extraordinary scenery. But the only dinosaurs to be found on this lost world are those made of stone. Exhausted and out of food, Imtern stayed on the summit for only a few hours, but long enough to realize that all around him were animals and plants never seen before. He saw plants with thick waxy leaves like this beautiful orchid. He noted flowers previously unknown, exotic and flamboyant, all of them eking out an existence in this bleak, windswept place. He discovered carnivorous plants of various kinds, including the sinister pitcher plant. The nature of all of these indicated a harsh and an extremely ancient environment. Even if there were no dinosaurs, this was truly a lost world worthy of further investigation. Then, wrote the explorer, a thick mist enveloped us, and heavy rain began to fall. The cold was suddenly intense. Imtern and his party were happy to descend to warmer temperatures below. Imtern's climb opened the door to those who would reveal the true extent of Roraima's secrets. But it was another 30 years before airplanes revolutionized exploration. Then, suddenly from the air, new worlds were discovered. These spectacular sinkholes, for example, on a tepui called Sarisarinyama. Here, in a sort of inverted lost world, an isolated miniature forest at the bottom of this 1,000-foot hole harbors many unique species. Aviators found it was possible to cross great tracts of forest and scrutinize unexplored mountaintops in relative comfort. It was daring, but risky. In the early days, they flew on haphazard routes through the mountains, navigating with little more than a compass and a lot of guesswork. One of these pilot adventurers was an American called Jimmy Angel, who came looking for gold, and on the 10th of November 1933 stumbled upon the world's highest waterfall. He was flying around the labyrinth of cliffs and canyons surrounding a huge plateau to the west of Roraima called Auyantipui, or Devil Mountain. Through the mist, he saw a column of water so high he turned to take another look. Jimmy Angel estimated the waterfall to be a mile high. It dwarfed his tiny plane. 67 years later, almost to the day, I retraced Jimmy Angel's flight of discovery. Jimmy had been trying to find a remote mountaintop where, some years earlier, he'd landed his plane and filled bags with gold nuggets. It was an attempt to find that mountain again that led him to the waterfall. Without maps, and only a compass to guide him, it's easy to understand how Jimmy became disoriented and flew into a dead-end canyon on Devil Mountain. Not many had believed his story of the gold, and not many believed his discovery of the mile-high waterfall, until an American expedition was sent to survey it. The official measurement, at 3,212 feet, fell short of a mile, but Angel Falls is still the world's highest. It's an awesome, indescribable feeling to approach this true wonder of the world from the air. It's one of those special experiences I'll never forget. Jimmy Angel was convinced that there was gold on top of Devil Mountain and was determined to land his plane on its summit. He set up camp on a savanna near the base of the mountain. With his wife Marie and 2 friends, he would attempt a daring landing on the top of the Tepui. Like the summit of Roraima, the top of Devil Mountain is rocky and divided by deep canyons. Angel and his companions finally found what they were looking for, a more or less level grassy area. Jimmy prepared for a landing. The landing had gone well until the wheels sank into soft ground and the plane nosed over. Luckily, no one was hurt. They spent 2 days trying to salvage the plane, but it became clear that they'd have to make their escape on foot. Their dreams of finding gold turned into a struggle for survival. Attempts at radio communication had failed, so they left a simple message pointing in the direction of their intended descent. The summit plateau of Devil Mountain is huge. For Jimmy Angel's party, it was a grueling ordeal to traverse its rugged, unexplored surface. The journey down took them 11 days. Somehow, they managed to survive. Like Roraima, Devil Mountain does not make life easy for visitors intent on exploring its misty summit or its canyons. Many have died in the attempt. It's a common observation by those who set foot on Tepuis, even among the local people. One feels oppressed, like an intruder in a hostile place. It takes several days to climb Devil Mountain. Break a leg here and you're in serious trouble. Moving on the summit is worse. Its labyrinth of rocks and ravines force you on a zigzag route over even the shortest distance. There's plenty of water up here, though. Streams of it stained gold by plant tannins. Perhaps these were the rivers of gold that convinced Angel to attempt his landing. Here on the top of Devil Mountain, I have a strange, eerie feeling of time standing still. This place really does feel lost in time, unchanged and untouched for millions of years. Watched by strange rock sentinels, I follow Angel's golden river to where it plunges over the cliff. As it nears the cliff face, Angel's River cuts a channel deeply into the surface of the plateau, and in order to reach the edge, I must follow a tortuous path through a jumble of boulders. A safety line will allow me to lean out over Angel Falls. It's a 3,200-foot sheer drop to the forest below. Angels River erupts from the cliff from tunnels some distance below the summit. It's truly one of the world's natural wonders. When Jimmy Angel died in a plane crash in 1956, his ashes were scattered over his waterfall in a final tribute. For any pilot, the tepuis are a treacherous area to fly. The abrupt cliffs are often shrouded by cloud. Turbulence, winds, and powerful downdrafts can pull a light aircraft into places from which it's not possible to escape. Here, the simplest of mechanical problems can become critical ones. If your engine fails or you run out of fuel, you can only try to glide to a clearing. But those can be hard to find in the endless thick jungle below. When an airplane plunges through the forest canopy, the branches and leaves will quickly grow back, swallowing up the evidence. In areas where maps and communications are poor, the chances of escape are slim, and Tepui country is littered with old wrecks. If it wasn't for aviators, though, most of this country would still be completely unknown. In 1985, I led another expedition to the Lost World. This time, it was to a small tepui called Autana. It's on Autana that the origin of these tepuis is revealed. These ancient tunnels are the oldest caves in the world. The caves were underground river systems at a time when the summit of this tiny tepui represented the old level of the land. We wanted to take a closer look, so I decided to skydive in. To reach the caves, we descended for almost 1,000 feet down the wall of Altana. The scale was unbelievable. The ledge outside the cave had seemed tiny from the plain. It was covered by trees and boulders. The cave itself was huge, passing from one side of the mountain to the other, with a central chamber reminiscent of a cathedral dome. It's difficult to say when water last flowed through these tunnels, but they were formed some 3 billion years ago, before life appeared on this planet. To fly from Altana to Roraima takes several hours in a small plane. But a very long time ago, their summits were connected. At that time, South America was joined to West Africa. As the continents drifted apart, enormous upheavals started to break up a huge mountain mass into individual tepuis. The natural erosion processes of rain and wind have done the rest, including the surreal sculpturing of the rock labyrinths on Roraima. Following explorer Im Turn's route, I have finally climbed to Roraima's summit and am now traversing it to try to reach the prow. The towering caricatures of rock faces create an eerie landscape. There's little recognizable sound here, save for an occasional bird, gentle piping of frogs, and the whistling of the wind. When you spend a long time in a place like this, the imagination begins to play tricks on the mind. Some of the sounds I think I've heard are otherworldly, straight out of dreams, even nightmares. There is a curious thrill, though, in experiencing as remote a place as this completely alone. It's part of the bewitching magic of the tepuis, part of what keeps drawing me back here. Outside the rocky labyrinth, the summit of Roraima has areas of flat rock and shallow boggy meadows. It's here that most of the plant life is to be found. To survive here, plant life must be adaptable, like this stegolepis, which has no permanent anchorage. Judging from its twisted form, it has led a nomadic existence, moved across the rocky surface by flash floods. Rainwater collects in deep pools, its course channeled along furrows in the rock surface. Some sedimentary layers of sandstone are softer than others, and it's these that erode more quickly, producing complex networks of underground water systems and isolated sinkhole ponds. It's the faster erosion of softer versus harder layers that produces the amazing shapes and exposes layers of quartz crystals that seem to sprout from the ground like gardens of jewels. The quartz may explain the legend that this lost world has fields of diamonds. The tepuis are an exotic botanical paradise. Almost every plant you see on Roraima is found only on this bleak mountaintop. There's little to cling to, except shallow soil or tiny rock crevices. Temperatures here can soar and then drop to freezing, and yet these fragile and colourful flowers manage to thrive. In order to cope with nutrient-poor soils, carnivorous plants like the sundew supplement their diet by trapping and digesting insects. The red colour of the leaves attracts the insect, which becomes trapped by the sticky tentacles. Its struggles trigger the leaf to close around the victim. Another carnivorous species, Heliamphora, or pitcher plant, has special leaves that collect rainwater. Like the sundew, the red colour attracts its insect prey. The insect is quite safe, unless it crawls onto the slippery inner surface of the pitcher. If it does, it will fall in, drown, and be digested by the plant. Inside the pitcher, downwardly projecting hairs ensure there's no escape. Just as the plants are peculiar to the tepuis, and often known only on a single mountaintop, the birds are also unique species. They are, for the most part, seed eaters and nectar feeders, who over centuries have adapted to this hostile environment and learned to make a living here. But there's one very special animal on Roraima that's even more ancient than the dinosaurs, and it lives here on these rocks. It's a black frog called Oreophrynella, and was probably here before the continents separated, for it's more closely related to African species than any in South America. As the ancient mountain mass broke up into isolated blocks, this black frog managed to survive on the summit. It was discovered when the first biologists came to Roraima in the late 1800s. When you pick it up, it tucks itself into a ball and becomes motionless. It can neither hop nor swim, and has opposable toes which help it cling to slippery rock surfaces. When it's cool, its black colour helps it to keep warm, and when it's hot, it finds shade or immerses its body in running water. Unlike most frogs which can swim, many of these more primitive frogs have probably been washed off the summit to the forest below by flash floods. In 1971, in the forest below the cliffs, I found 4 of what I called mystery frogs, which were without doubt closely related to the summit species. What intrigued me then was how they got here. Were they an ancient species that had lived here for millions of years? Or was their origin more recent? Survivors perhaps of flash floods on the summit that somehow adapted to this new environment. For me, as a young biologist, they were a very exciting discovery, and their exact origin still remains a mystery. That first expedition to Roraima in 1971 was rich in discoveries, but we'd been unprepared for the final overhanging rock face, Roraima's prow, that prevented us from reaching the summit. Now I was determined to get there. Crossing the summit of Roraima is not an easy task. Between me and the prow are cliffs, loose rock, and deep canyons channeling water outwards to feed the 3 great rivers of this part of South America, the Amazon, Orinoco, and Essequibo. My route led me due north through a wide gully filled with otherworldly plants, until, finally, only a few rocky crevices separated me from my goal. The tip of Roraima's summit commands an extraordinary view, looking north across unbroken forest. Looking vertically down, I could see the site of our camp 30 years before. It reminded me of the thrill of my first experience in a place where no human had been before. From the moment the first intrepid travelers saw Roraima and wondered what may dwell on its elusive summit, many have been lured to explore the tepuis. They are one of the last unknown frontiers of our planet, but even now we've only just begun to uncover their secrets.
To learn more about the living Edens, visit PBS online at pbs.org.
Major funding for nature is provided by the Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television. Major corporate support is made possible by Canon, dedicated to preserving the never-ending beauty of nature. Canon lets you capture the wild in photographs and leave it as you found it. Canon. Ford. Preserving our national parks is an important issue, so Ford has established a number of projects from research and education to cleaner burning vehicles and bicycles in the parks. Ford, working to share today's treasures with future generations. And by TIAA-CREF. How is it that some people always seem to make ends meet when you're sure that money was the last thing on their minds. TIAA CREF, managing money for people with other things to think about. This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.